right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Hitting the Field podcast. It is part 2 of our NFL free agency initial breakdowns. You can catch the NFC breakdowns on our YouTube channel at Hitting the Field. Make sure you go and subscribe, and you can also check it out on Apple Podcasts. But for today, we're going to the AFC. My personal favorite conference, and we're going to go through each team to see what they've done initially in free agency after a week and break it down team by team. I can't do this job alone, so I have two of HTF's best and brightest here with me. We have Mr. Sean Green on the podcast today. Sean, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Best and brightest. I like the compliment, Jeremy. It really suits me well.
Yes. The best part or the brightest part?
I don't know. I'm going to leave that up to everybody to have their opinion on that.
All right, that's fair. Fair. All right, and another one of HTF's best and brightest, Mr. Nick Geddes. Nick, how you doing today on this Monday evening, soon to be put up Tuesday morning?
I'm doing pretty good. Just trying to stay hidden inside the house at the moment, so as everybody is. So
could you say that you're hitting the field?
I would not be hitting the field, no.
No, but you're hitting the field. Hidden the field.
Oh, hidden the field.
Yeah,
yes,
you are hitting the field.
Definitely hidden in the field for sure.
There you go. See, you had to. All right, kind of like break up some ice, and let's just get things going. No team, I think, has had a more seismic change than the team that bid farewell to their quarterback of 20 years, Tom Brady, and the New England Patriots parted ways, and now Tom Brady is a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but that leaves New England in a bit of a transition for the first time in a pretty long time. They signed familiar face Brian Hoyer. They gave the franchise tag to interior lineman Joe Thuney, and they've made some small signings here and there. But not only did they lose Brady, they lost a lot of pieces on the defensive end. Kyle Van Noy and Landon Roberts both flocked down to Miami to join the Dolphins. Jamie Collins, Deron Harmon, Danny Shelton, three key contributors to that defense, are now Detroit Lions. So, Sean, you're our resident Patriots guy here at HTF. What is your response to what the Patriots have done so far in free agency?
They really haven't done much, to be completely honest. They're losing a bunch of pieces, but that's understandable. That's something every year that the New England Patriots go through. We get a bunch of players and we make them stars, and then they go to other teams and they get big contracts. This year's no different, but it's just a little different because of Tom Brady leaving, Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins. We just released Steven Gostkowski, which has been our kicker for 14 years. So it just feels very different, unlike any other free agency, because so many veterans on our team are just getting up and leaving. The problem that we're running into this offseason is we have no cap space. So we re-signed Devin McCourty to a 2-year, $23 million deal, which I was very surprised by, because you can get a good free safety. Yes, Devin McCourty is one of the greatest for us, but for $11 million, I didn't think that would be something we'd want to do. And then, to everybody's surprise, we, just like you said, we franchise tagged Joe Thuney, who, in my opinion, is a top 10 offensive lineman in the entire NFL. But I just didn't expect us to use the franchise tag. I thought we would let him go to save cap space. So it's just been a very weary and different free agency for us. We aren't doing anything big because we just don't have the cap space to do it.
Yeah, so, I mean, Nick, what does a team like the Patriots do when you don't have a lot of cap space? Do you just wave the white flag and say we'll make it up in the draft or we'll make it up next season? Or do you just say, you know what, maybe we can try to find some buys, some maybe discounted buys in free agency?
Yeah, I think you're going to see, this has been the Patriots' motto forever, is to get discounted buys in free agency and plug them into that system. and it has always seemed to work. So I don't see Bill Belichick shifting away from that philosophy at all going into 2020, and even more so than ever, he's going to have to rely on it because a lot of the star power is gone. And it feels that Bill Belichick has a plan, and specifically talking quarterback, it may be that he's going full in on, trying to not win as many games and get a quarterback that he wants next year, or he may like a quarterback this year, like a Jordan Love that he could probably get at 23 or potentially move up to get. And that's kind of like the Brian Hoyer signing kind of feels like that's the plan. But, a lot remains to be seen in New England, and it's definitely a big change they're going through.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to ask this question, but I'll do it in a way that encompasses all of my questions into one. And I'll pose this to both of you. We can start with Sean. But
okay.
Who is starting under center week 1 for the Patriots?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Jarrett Stidham, 100% actually. I think the Brian Hoyer signing just signified that. When you get Brian Hoyer for 1 year, $1 million, and his agent says we would have came to New England if other teams were going to offer $5 to $6 million, I still would have let Brian go to New England for $1 million. That really tells you that New England wants Brian Hoyer to come compete, but also knowingly, hey, if Jarrett Stidham is going to be the starter, you're going to need to, mentor him, coach him, because Brian Hoyer is respected with this New England Patriots team and the coaches. So I originally thought we might go for a Jameis or a Cam, some big splash names that might get released or not signed. But I think it's almost too clear that we're going to have Jarrett Stidham under center and then draft a quarterback. I do not think we draft in the first round. I feel like you may get Jalen Hurts, move up in the second or the third, draft somebody in that range. I just don't see us taking a quarterback in the first round.
Nick, do you think it's smarter for the Patriots to go look for their future quarterback in free agency, or is it best to go in the draft? And by future, I mean 2020. I don't necessarily mean down the line, but for 2020, is it smarter for them to go draft or free agency?
I think it would be draft, and the reason why I say that, I think this is a year to put Stidham out there and see what you have. And worst case, if he totally, craps the bed and, Hoyer has to come in and he does the same thing, presumably, and the Patriots are picking, top 10, top 5 next year, then you're in prime position to potentially get your guy. But for 2026, I would still take your bet on somebody here. And specifically, I don't think Jarrett Stidham is going to start. I think Brian Hoyer may end up getting the guy, and maybe they would put Stidham in front. But I definitely could see the point that Sean made.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I think I said this on Hitting the Field. Sorry, I said this on Hitting the Field this morning, and I'll reciprocate it again today.
Mm-hmm.
The Patriots in 2021 are going to have over $100 million in cap space. Mm-hmm. Like, just think about that. Bill Belichick with $100 million. So with the Patriots not having a quarterback that is getting paid $30 million a year, like Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer, they have room to spend money in other places next year.
Right. So now Jarrett Stidham kind of reminds me a lot of Trevor Siemian, and this is why. When Peyton Manning retired, it was clear that it was Siemian's team. But people were like, I don't know, this guy hasn't really done much, and he hadn't at that point. I believe maybe his first game when he took over was his first start, and Denver was coming out of they were the defending champions that year, and Trevor Siemian led them to a respectable 9-7. Now, they eventually decided that Trevor Siemian was not the answer at quarterback for them long term, and I don't know if Jarrett Stidham can be that. He can be that, or he could be the next Tom Brady, or somewhere in between. You really don't know. But I think it is smart for the Patriots to do some due diligence on their behalf for Jarrett Stidham. I think it's also in their best interest to go and get a quarterback. A Jalen Hurts maybe. Jacob Eason comes to mind as someone who could be that guy.
Yeah.
Give them as many options as they can. And Jarrett Stidham is an option they already have, so why not utilize that option?
And I want to just reiterate this as well. if they didn't believe Jarrett Stidham could be the guy from what they've seen in so many practices, Bill Belichick would not throw him out there to be the starter or to even compete. So what that tells me is I did hear from a bunch of Patriots reporters that it reminds them a lot of the Jimmy Garoppolo situation, the rise that he took. So what that tells me is they are confident in Jarrett Stidham, and if they're confident, then I think most Patriots fans will be confident as well.
Yeah. I want to move over to the defenses. Go ahead, Nick.
Just a quick point. I also think that definitely not throwing money at a free agent quarterback like Jameis Winston or trying to trade for Cam Newton. I think that both guys are potentially damaged goods, and I don't think it's smart to take on, a heavier contract with a team capped like this for me.
Yeah, I want to move over to the defensive side of the ball. You lose pretty much like 5 solid contributors from that defensive team a year ago, from arguably the best defense in the NFL. Van Noy goes to Miami, Elandon Roberts to Miami, Jamie Collins, Deron Harmon, Danny Shelton, all to Detroit. Mm-hmm. How do you fill those gaps? Do you fill it with people you already got, or are they looking in free agency right now for some quick hits that they can possibly, fill in the gap for that year?
See, the issue this year with us is we don't have cap room to sign anybody that can be a automatic starter. The Patriots have no cap room at this moment in time. I think by releasing Gostkowski, we created like $1 million in cap space. So the Patriots are very limited in what they can do. Yes, the Patriots have lost many key pieces on defense. You got Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins, like you said. They played amazing last year. They played out of their minds. But I don't think Patriots fans are necessarily concerned with that side of the ball as much as the offensive side. Chase Winovich comes to mind when you're thinking a defensive player that was behind Kyle Van Noy, didn't get much playing time, but when he did play, he showed out. He should have been a starter if on a bunch of other teams. If the Patriots didn't have Kyle Van Noy. So, yes, they lost a bunch of defensive studs, but to be completely honest, I don't think many Patriots fans are too concerned with the defensive side of the ball when you have Stephon Gilmore, Devin McCourty, a bunch of people that have played in the system and know what they're doing. Dante Hightower as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. That defense is still – I think they can be like next man up. I think that defense, what made them so good was their depth. And they had a lot of young guys come in, and they will, again, draft another set of guys that can go out there. So let's grade New England on their free agency thus far. Let's give it a letter grade. Somewhere between A+ if you think this is the best offseason they've ever had, or to an F if you think it's the worst. So I'll start with Nick.
I would think that it's a C+, and I don't want to ding them a lot because of the situation that they're in, but the reality is they did lose a lot of guys, so I would put them at a C+.
Fair. Sean, what do you give them?
I would give them a C. They're not getting much better and they're not getting much worse. Obviously, you lost Tom Brady, which that's going to be the talk of the town for the next year. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. But I think when you really break it down, this was going to happen sooner rather than later, and the Patriots are letting it happen now. So they'll compete. They'll still be competitive. I still think they have a strong chance, if not the best chance, to win the AFC East. And because their roster is still talented. It's just the questions at quarterback and the losses on defense give this free agency a C.
Yeah. They certainly didn't get better. Not necessarily through the fault of their own, but I have a genuine question though, Sean. If Tom Brady does resign, let's just say he does. He's like, I'm going to be a Patriot for life, all that. How many of those defensive guys do you think stay? Or do you think they all go regardless?
They all go regardless.
Okay.
Tom Brady staying does not have anything to do with the defensive players. Listen, if you look at all the contracts, besides Deron Harmon, we traded him, but if you look at the contracts for the defensive players, Kyle Van Noy's not getting paid $51 million to be a New England Patriot. The Miami Dolphins have a bunch of money to give, and they're going to do it. Jamie Collins would not be getting paid $10 million a year to be a linebacker here. That just wouldn't happen. So That's more, and that's why I said like the defensive players leaving, and usually it's a couple offensive players, but all the defensive players does not surprise me one bit, and I actually don't care at all. And the Patriots shouldn't care at all because that's year to year. It happens all the time.
And they can groom the next guy up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We know how to draft defensive players, and
Yeah.
Bill Belichick knows how to do that. So more power to him.
The fact that they didn't get better, though, I can't give them a grade any better than a C. I'd probably go C minus just because I think that C is average, and I think they've had a below average offseason. But also, like you said, Sean, I think that, to be honest, everyone thinks it's the end of the Patriots, but as someone who is not a Patriots person, I have to agree with that. I really think that it's the Patriots division until another team proves otherwise. And to me, even though Buffalo might have gotten better and Miami gets better and even the Jets get a little bit better, I still don't think that they are better than the Patriots, in my opinion.
Coaching matters in the NFL, Jeremy. Coaching matters. So listen, the worst case scenario for the Patriots is, listen, say they go 5-11. Jarrett Stidham's terrible. They have to put in Brian Hoyer. The offense is not good at all. The worst case scenario is you get Trevor Lawrence the next year.
Yeah.
So for Patriots fans around the world that are
probably
hurting,
for that.
Oh well, yeah, a bunch of people are hoping. That'd be great to get Trevor Lawrence. But listen, Patriots fans need to put their hope in Jarrett Stidham. And listen, we don't need a quarterback if Jarrett Stidham is the answer.
Exactly.
So I think it's a wait-and-see game. We'll see what happens. Yeah. But, yes, the Patriots did not get any better this offseason.
We'll move from one Patriots coach team to another, from New England to Miami, where Brian Flores took the latter half of the 2019 season and turned what looked to be one of the worst teams in NFL history. It's not looking like that anymore. The Dolphins have been probably the biggest spender in the entire NFL thus far. Not only do they get Kyle Van Noy and Landon Roberts from New England, they pick up Byron Jones from Dallas, made him the highest paid corner in the league, Jordan Howard from Philadelphia, Emmanuel Ogbah, Eric Flowers. They got Ted Karras from New England, Shaq Lawson from Buffalo. It's just they're taking a bunch of pieces from every one of their rivals, and hey, Miami does not look like the worst team in the NFL. They look very far from that, Nick.
Yeah, I think that they definitely exceeded expectations last year when they were like pretty much through the floor. And I look at what they did. Although they improved their team, and I'm not going to dispute that, my only worry with them is I feel like they gave a lot of money out, maybe just for giving money out's sake. Like they had money and they said we're going to spend it. And I don't know if it was smart money because giving Shaq Lawson $10 million a year and Emmanuel Ogbah $7.5 million a year to be depth pieces, those aren't difference makers at edge. So I question those moves. Eric Flowers has been a travesty at left tackle his entire career, and when he moved to guard last year, he was okay.
He got $10 million
I don't
a
know
year.
if that justifies. Yeah, I don't know if that justifies $10 million a year. We could talk about Byron Jones being the highest paid corner now, and how debatable that is. And then Van Noy, we're going to find out if he was a Bill Belichick disciple or not, which does help that he's going to Flores.
A similar system, yes.
Yeah, that helps him. So, but we're going to find out, really. So I like that they improved the team, and I'm glad they're trying to go for it. But I just fear that this is spending monies for spending money's sake.
Yeah. Out of these signings, what was the best signing and what was the worst signing? We'll go with that. Let's start with the best. Let's start with the best signing. What do you think out of all of these moves that the Dolphins made was the best signing in terms of money and in terms of talent? Just together.
I think
full package.
I think Jordan Howard. I think he's the one that I actually liked for $5 million a year. Jordan Howard, started his career off with back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. Kind of got lost in the shuffle his last year in Chicago, and then with the committee last year with Philly. I think he's going to have a chance to be the lead running back. So I like that for the value because Jordan Howard has kind of proven himself before, and he's still in his prime. So by no means is there a lot of wear and tear on those legs. So I'm excited to see what Jordan Howard could do.
Sean, do you agree with Jordan Howard, or do you have someone else in mind?
I have somebody else in mind. I do think that Jordan Howard, that was, you got him on a good deal, obviously. I would go Ted Karras.
That's what I was thinking.
That offensive line is terrible, and Ted Karras went in for an injured David Andrews and really played outstanding. So I think it was like 1 year, $40 million for Ted Karras. I think to get him on a deal like that, that's pretty incredible. And then obviously we don't even need to talk about the worst signing for Miami. It's just Byron Jones.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. I'm really sick to my stomach about it because it's like, I get when you're a team and you're trying to get free agents to come to you, you really need to throw some money at them. But you're the Miami Dolphins. You're in a great city, a place that a lot of people want to go. But it literally looks like the culture for Miami is, listen, we are so bad. We need to pay these guys so much money just to get a couple free agents. So paying Byron Jones that much money, and especially the money he's getting in guarantees, is absolutely atrocious. And Miami really needs to think, are we going to be good for a long time? Or are we just trying to throw some money at these guys on the spot just to be somewhat competitive for a couple years?
Like, I wonder what Byron Jones's second best offer was and how far off it was from the $70+ million that he got from Miami.
Probably not even close to what he got from Miami.
Yeah.
Miami,
no way Jerry Jones is giving him that.
No way.
Absolutely. He can't even pay Dak Prescott. You really think he would pay Byron Jones $82.5 million over 5 years? He's not even a good corner. He's a decent corner, but that's not his position. But Miami's paying him to be a corner. So congratulations on making the signing. Like, good job. But it's atrocious to think that that's the highest paid corner in the league just because Miami needs a corner.
Mm-hmm. I think that from what Nick said, they had the money, so they spent it. It's like they had the money, so they were like, okay, we'll spend it. Because they spent all of last year neglecting spending money because they didn't need to, because they weren't contending. I think what happened was Miami saw a slight little opening, and they're like, okay, maybe if we get money here, and we spend money there, and we get this person, we get that person, we can actually do something here. I think that the signings they have had moved them from a 5-win team to about a 7 or 8-win team. I don't think it moves the needle enough for them to become a contender, but I think it does enough to at least put them in the right direction. So that's why I can't really say that they've had a bad offseason. I think that, most of these signings are positive. I like the Van Noy signing. I like the Robert signing. The Byron Jones signing, he's very talented, and he will be, with Xavier Howard, one of the better cornerback tandems in the league. But, again, yes, the money is a bit concerning because I don't think that he is worth – I think he's maybe worth about a little more than half of what he actually made. I think 4 years, $50 million would have been about the right price. Maybe even a little more. Like, $450 sounds like a lot, even for Byron Jones. But, they have him on the roster, and that's what matters at this point. So that defense was atrocious at the beginning of last year. Now is showing signs of, hey, we have some signs of life. Ted Karras coming in, possibly becoming that new starting center for possibly a rookie quarterback. That's going to be huge. I think that they're in the right direction, which is why I'm going to give them a B+. I think that they've made good moves in the right moments. I think that they've made some questionable moves regarding money, but they do get a lot better. They're one of the more improved teams in the league in this first week of free agency, so that's why I give them a B+.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a C. I think it's what Miami is as a franchise. They're just shockingly average. That's what they are all the time. And I think, like you said, you could see them being a 7 or 8-win team. That puts them right where they've been for the last 15, 20 years. Mediocrity. Mm-hmm. Right where you don't want to be. And that's why I like how Miami has the 3 first-round picks this year. You have the opportunity now to build your roster. I don't think you're ready to start spending money on guys yet because you don't have other players around to make it work. All you have is a team that could win anywhere from 5 to 8 games. And is that really what Miami fans want to see again? Is another team like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sean, what are you thinking?
Nick, I couldn't have said it better myself, to be completely honest with you. Yeah, they're a mediocre team. It's honestly sickening because I feel so bad for Dolphins fans that are just looking for a contender, just a team to do decent. You have 3 first-round picks, and you decide, like, listen, I'm sure you could have got a solid pass rusher in the first round where you're not paying him boatloads of money.
Yeah,
The
I'd be
problem
shocked
with
if they go
Miami,
pass rusher in the first round now.
exactly. Like, you're going to take a pass. If you take a pass rusher, then he sits behind Agba or Lawson. And it's like, listen, you're such a young team. And obviously, the signings are great. And I think you said it, Jeremy, and it's exactly right. You increase your wins by 3, maybe 3 or 4. 4 is generous.
Mm-hmm.
But this reminds me a lot of what the Los Angeles Rams did. They had the money because they had Jared Goff on a rookie contract. They spent all that money thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. We can go for a Super Bowl and spend all this money. But then what happens when you have to pay the quarterback? What happens when you run out of cap space and then you can't sign these guys? Miami's cap space is going to be atrocious for the next couple of years now that they spent it all. So what are you going to do when you start, what if you draft Tua, what happens when you have to pay him in a couple of years?
That's when their
You're
window
going to lose
closes.
all these guys.
That's when their window closes.
They've got a 3-year window, 3 or 4 year window
Yeah.
to go win a Super Bowl. And I'm sorry, but with Buffalo and New England, you're not going to get out of the division. I'm sorry to burst their bubble here, but it's not going to happen. I give them a C-.
C-. All right. So let's move on now to the Buffalo Bills, a team that had a strong improvement from 2018 to 2019, and from what it looks like so far, a pretty steady incline as well. They go out, they trade for Stephon Diggs. They sign A.J. Klein to be their new middle linebacker. Josh Norman comes into the fold. Mario Addison is now in the fold. You're seeing a lot of money spent on the defensive line and the front seven especially. Sean, how impressed are you with the Bills and their moves thus far?
I don't know if it's impressed. I'm a little surprised because Buffalo has been known for not making a lot of smart decisions with what they do in free agency and trades. I think the Stephon Diggs trade, honestly, is one of the best trades I've seen in the last couple of years when it comes to a team and what a team actually needs. The Buffalo Bills needed a guy, like a receiver, that could help out Josh Allen. I don't know if Josh Allen can do it, but I can't stress enough how much better the Bills got with a decent wide receiver. And Stephon Diggs is way more than a decent wide receiver. The other signings, they're solid signings that'll help their depth. I think A.J. Klein is a great middle linebacker that can help them out a lot. But I think they're looking to go a little bit younger on the D-line. I think that's what's hurt them the most, besides Edmonds. But they've usually been pretty older when it came to that D-line. So now they're starting to go younger through the draft and free agency. I think what does hurt them, though, and I don't know how long this will last, is if they start Josh Norman at quarterback or corner, that will really hurt their secondary. And I don't know what other options they have. So Buffalo definitely got better, and they're poised to make a run at that AFC East title. But I just don't know how much better they got until I see it on the field.
So, Nick, do you think that Buffalo, seeing that New England is making their moves as with moving on from Tom Brady, do you think they're seeing this as like, oh, hey, this is our chance. Let's go and make a huge splash right now?
Yeah, I think everybody in the NFL, kind of sees this as a positive. But if you're the Bills, you have a team that has the pieces right now to at least make the playoffs. I don't think to win a Super Bowl, but to make the playoffs and make things interesting. And like you said, they needed a wide receiver. That was their obvious need, and they were probably going to draft one, which is a really good class. But why don't you just get Stephon Diggs, who's at just beginning his prime, and you get him for the first-round pick? So Stephon Diggs is your first-round pick, and you'll take that every day of the week. And I really like the Mario Addison signing because I think he's one of the more underrated pass rushers. He is 32 years old, but he's had 9 sacks the last 4 years, every single year. So I like that one. And the only one I'm not crazy about is the Vernon Butler, $9 million. I don't know why we're paying death pieces $9 million. I still will never understand how these teams are doing this, but I do like what the Bills are doing, and they definitely see this as an advantage to take this division over.
Yeah, I think the Bills. I'm a little. I think they were like, okay, Stephon Diggs is their piece on offense, and they kind. But I think that offense was where they were needing to add more pieces, and I'm a little concerned that they didn't do that. They addressed the defensive line, which I felt was necessary, but not their biggest need. Do you think that this means that the draft is where Buffalo goes to address these offensive issues?
I think that they probably see Devin Singletary as their workhorse running back, and I think he showed enough last year that proves he could be that, or they could draft another running back to complement him as well. Receiver-wise, you have a pretty good duo in Stephon Diggs and John Brown, and it allows John Brown to become a natural number two, which I think he fits so much better than in being the one. And Cole Beasley goes down to being the number three, which has always been his role. So I don't really know how much more they want to add to it. I mean, it never hurts to have more weapons for Josh Allen, but at this point, I think it's about protecting him more so than anything.
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna ask you guys just to grade the Bills right now. Do you think that the Bills and also do you think that the Bills moves they've made so far will put them at the top of the AFC East next season? Sean, we'll start with you.
I don't think you can put anybody at the top of the AFC East besides the New England Patriots until they do something about it. That's just a known fact. Do I think the Bills have the potential? Absolutely. This is the most potential I've seen in years that a team can knock off New England just because New England's vulnerable. They don't have Tom Brady to save them anymore. They have to go with a new quarterback. So, yes, I think Buffalo could win the AFC East, but by no means right now are they the favorites.
I would say that until I see the Patriots fall, I would not say that they will not be the favorites. But I do think Buffalo is the favorites only because if the Patriots are really going to roll out Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer, which if you're trying to see what you have in Stidham, there's no shame in doing that. I cannot put them as the favorite with something like uncertain like that at quarterback.
So what grade would you give Buffalo right now?
I would give them a B plus. I like what they've done. Like I said, the only thing that keeps them from getting an A for me is the Vernon Butler signing, but everything else I don't have a problem with, and I actually really like most of these.
Yeah, Sean, would you agree with B plus, or you got something else?
Yeah, it's a perfect grade, B plus. Diggs makes that a B plus. Like I said, I don't really like any of the other signings. The Addison one is solid, but in decline. But it's not an A for me. It's a solid free agency, and hopefully draft for the Buffalo Bills, but it's a B plus.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a B because I'm not entirely convinced that Stephon Diggs is their answer on offense to fix all their problems that they had. I think it definitely helps, but I don't know if it fixes everything. So for that, I'm gonna give them a B. But I do think that they do get better. So a B it is from me. And
listen, the Stephon Diggs experiment, if Josh Allen is not going to throw the ball accurately, like we know he really doesn't, Stephon Diggs' head case might, burst a bubble.
And
that's
exactly my concern. So let's move on to the final team in the AFC East, the New York Jets. And
do we have to, Jeremy? Can we just skip the Jets?
We'll be quick. We'll be quick about it.
There's something to talk about.
We'll be quick. So the two words I would use to describe the Jets' free agency period is offensive line. They get three guys that you could argue could start for them week one. George Fant at tackle from Seattle. Connor McGovern, who comes from Denver. He could be an interior lineman. And Greg Van Roten from Carolina. So those three can play on the offensive line and could start right away. And that was a huge issue that the Jets had last year. And I think that they will need to I think it's a good start for them in order to rebuild this team to what it needs to be. Would you agree with that, Nick?
Yeah, I like the depth signings that they added there because it's so much better than what they had last year. They had nobody to protect whoever was at quarterback, especially when Darnold was out. But I think the glaring thing here is how in the world have we made it this far in the free agency and the Jets still have not done anything receiver related that is relevant. Like Josh Doxson, like that's it. That's all you're going to give Sam Darnold. Like right now, he's throwing to Jamison Crowder as his number one. I really hope they have some kind of a plan here because you need to give Sam Darnold some guys to throw the ball to here, and they totally neglected to do any of this. They're probably not going to bring Robbie Anderson back, so I just question what in the world they're doing.
Yeah, that's another thing. Robbie Anderson is one of the best free agents left in free agency, and he still is unsigned. The Jets had him last year, and Sean, is there a way that Robbie Anderson makes his way back to the Jets?
Yeah, if Robbie Anderson goes to all these teams and doesn't get good money that he wants, I feel like that's the obvious reason he hasn't signed yet, is because no team actually is paying him a lot. Because the wide receiver needy teams, which I think will hurt some wide receiver needy teams, are just saying, hey, I'll wait till the draft and I'll draft a wide receiver in the first or second round. I feel like honestly that's what the Jets are planning on doing. Because yeah, if you're looking at what the Jets have done, you're like, who are we going to have a wide receiver? We have like Braxton Berrios starting at this point. So, no, I think the Jets are going to go into the draft and they're going to draft a wide receiver. But if they can get Robbie Anderson on like low money, maybe 7 to 8 million a year, I think they do it. You can't get a better deal than that for him. The Jets just look atrocious. I really don't care about any of the stuff they've done. Pierre Tizier, signing him makes this like not a atrocious free agency period, but they haven't really done anything to increase their win total. If anything, I feel like they dropped a game this free agency.
Yeah, what concerns me is that they didn't do a whole lot on the defensive side of the ball. They did get Pierre Desir, which I think is necessary for them, but I don't think just Pierre Desir is going to be enough for them to improve on the defensive side of the ball. Now, last year, the Jets were one of the biggest spenders, if not the biggest spender. I remember last year everyone was like, oh, watch out for the Jets. They got Le'Veon Bell. They got C.J. Mosley. It's going to be crazy. But it ended up being quite the contrary for the Jets. 7-9.
Yeah, Miami should have taken notes.
Miami-ish.
Yeah, Miami should have taken the notes. Like, listen, you go out, spend big money, and then it doesn't always work out. So I hope Miami really did their homework before signing like 12 guys to big contracts.
Yeah, so my question to you guys is, what do the Jets need to do anything else in free agency? Is there a free agent that they can go out and get right now that's on the open market that can go and help them right now? And we'll start with Sean.
Yeah, maybe you could put Cam Newton at running back and try that out. I really just don't know. Re-sign your own free agent, Robbie Anderson. Like, it just boggles my mind. I think it's perfect. They don't have cap. Like, they have good amount of cap room, but there's nobody out on the market right now that can really make your team any better. So I do like that the Jets aren't going and just throwing money out, but you also have to look and be like, okay, Le'Veon Bell's not working out. He just doesn't fit Adam Gase's offense. C.J. Mosley was hurt for most of the year, so I get a pass on that. He's a good player. They're not getting better, though. They're staying stagnant, and I think they are going to be the worst team in the AFC East. I do think Miami is better than them. So I honestly don't know what they can do right now to, make this any better than it is.
Yeah, this is the problem. It's slim pickings now, and the Jets have waited so long in free agency to do much of relevance here on the defensive side of the ball that it's slim picking. So you're going to have to build through the draft because I don't think you want to start throwing money at guys who are left here. And I think they're going to really have to rely on Quinnen Williams to play like the third overall pick because he had a lot of injuries last year, and when he was playing, he wasn't really effective. They really need him to play the third overall pick because I think that's something that could set this franchise back if your third overall pick does not pan out.
So does this make this more of a reason why they need to perform better in free agency? Because the draft, Quinnen Williams, he was the third overall pick, definitely worthy of that a year ago, but might not have necessarily played up to that potential in year one. So does this free agency class only heighten the need because their draft products that they got, Sam Darnold third overall, Quinnen Williams third overall, they aren't panning out?
I don't think it's not panning out. Like, you got to give it time. Quentin Williams is so young, and Sam Darnold, even though I don't personally think he's going to amount to be a top quarterback, you have to see where it goes. But the problem with the Jets isn't that their draft picks aren't panning out. It's they don't know how to build a roster. They signed Adam Gase as a head coach, but Adam Gase has been notorious to not have a great team. He has a couple great players that win a couple games. So that's my issue with the Jets. I don't think you're ever going to be a great team because they don't play together. They play to what Adam Gase kind of wants. And with Sam Darnold, in my opinion, not going to be a top quarterback, when you don't have receivers around Sam Darnold to help him, that's going to end up making your team not so great.
Yeah, like when you look up and down this roster, there's just not much going on that you think and you go, oh, there's some potential there. Like it's really Sam Darnold, Le'Veon Bell, Jamal Adams, C.J. Mosley, and a bunch of bleh. Like, it's just kind of, it's kind of like Miami. It's been the Jets' MO for a while, and that's why the Patriots have taken advantage. I mean, they've done their part, no doubt about it, but they have really taken advantage of these three teams for so long being as inept that they have been.
Yeah, so let's grade the Jets, guys. We've talked about the Jets long enough. So
yeah, let's just do it quickly.
Yeah,
let's just
grade.
take the Band-Aid off.
Rip the Band-Aid. What do y'all got?
D minus, just because they signed Pierre Desir and he helps. D minus.
Yeah, D. Solid offensive line depth.
Yeah, I'm gonna give them a C just because I don't think they get much better or much worse at all. I like the signings that they made on the offensive line, which kind of saves them a little bit. So I'll give them a C. So let's move from the AFC East now to the AFC North, where the Baltimore Ravens were once upon a time the best team in football, only to not even win a playoff game, and it was very much a fall from grace.
I called
a nasty fall from grace. Sean says he called it, and he did on the HDF podcast back in January. So, but they go out and they improve the defensive side of the ball. They get Michael Brockers from LA, Calais Campbell from Jacksonville, and they re-up their contract with Jimmy Smith. Very quiet offseason so far from Baltimore, but I think the moves they've made so far, Nick, have been solid.
Yeah, less is more. This is a great run organization. You get a guy like Calais Campbell, who although he is 34, the guy can still play. He's on a win now football team, so it's a perfect situation for him. Losing a guy like Michael Pierce, who is very important to stopping the run, is going to hurt a little bit, but they countered with bringing in Michael Brockers. So they quick replace right there, and they got a second-round pick back for Hayden Hurst, who's a tight end credit them. That was a first-round pick, did pan out. Get rid of it, move it on, and you get it for a second-round pick. I mean, that's one of the more underrated great trades that has been made this offseason. So, I mean, I love what Baltimore did here.
Yeah. I think that Baltimore's made small moves to get – I don't think they had much to change about their team. So, they haven't. They lose some pieces, Tony Jefferson, Brandon Carr, but – they're able, and Michael Pierce goes to Minnesota, but they're able to get pieces that will keep them to where they need to be. They don't get too much better, but there wasn't much room for improvement to begin with. So I think Baltimore has done enough to where they don't slip back and get too much worse. Would you agree with that, Sean?
Absolutely. If anything, Baltimore scares me even more now just by the moves that they made. The defense was, I think, when you looked at both the offense and defense, the defense was the thing that you'd be like, listen, they're not really that great. They're a decent football team on defense. But you could see there's some games that you could just watch and be like, okay, that defense isn't that great. They get tired very easily. They play hard for the first quarter, and then they kind of take a dip depending on the game. I think with this move, regardless of the cap room, like, yes, Calais Campbell is a good chunk out of your cap. You're a contending team. So a move like that, you can't hate. The guy has been consistent his whole career. Michael Brockers, a solid pass rusher. I don't think Baltimore could have done anything more, and I think they took some people by surprise. These are some great moves, and this makes them the clear number one in the AFC, and probably they're going to win the AFC North more than likely.
Yeah. Let's do a quick grade for Baltimore. There's not too much to discuss. I'll give them a B. I'll give them a B. I like what they've done. They haven't necessarily gotten better, but they haven't gotten worse. But I think the moves that they made. I think Calais Campbell's more than just a guy that you get on the field, leader on and off the field, and I think they need someone like that on the defensive end, especially because that's where they lost. That's where they lost the divisional game. So B from me for Baltimore.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with an A minus. Like I said, less is more, and they didn't have much to do anyway, but they still went and brought in a Michael Brockers, brought in a Calais Campbell, and that shows that they're doing everything they can to win a Super Bowl. So I like to see that. So I'll give them an A minus.
Yep, A minus.
Yeah, I was going to go A minus as well. I think they deserve an A for what they did. They made that defense a lot better and made them more scary. So definitely an A minus.
Yep. And with that, we'll move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who they made some small adjustments, adding Eric Ebron, adding Stefan Wisniewski, but they take some hits as well. They lose Javon Hargrave to Philadelphia. BJ Finney goes to Seattle. Nick Vannett goes to Denver. I'm pretty 50-50. I think Eric Ebron's an upgrade for them at tight end, which they desperately needed. Sean, how do you feel about Ebron signing with the Steelers?
Yeah, I saw a lot of people not liking the signing on Twitter. I was shocked by it. I thought it was a great signing by the Steelers. Eric Ebron has been a very productive tight end, especially when he was with the Colts. So I do like the signing for Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's season really just hangs on if Big Ben is going to look like Big Ben. If Big Ben looks like a shell of himself and looks like he's injured all the time, then, Pittsburgh's just going to be an 8-8 football team. But with a good quarterback, those Baltimore-Pittsburgh games will be competitive, and there will be a race to the finish line in the AFC North. There's no question about it.
Yeah, like Sean said, the season is going to rest on the shoulders of Big Ben Roethlisberger if he's going to be healthy and he's going to be the same old Roethlisberger that we're accustomed to seeing. You look at what they did in free agency, the Ebron signing gives Big Ben another target to throw to. Wisniewski's a solid presence on the offensive line. He's been around. He's coming off being on that offensive line that just won the Super Bowl. Losing Javon Hargrave, I don't think I can overstate. That is a huge loss. He's probably one of my favorite signings of this offseason for the money that Philly got for him, and I think that's a huge loss for Pittsburgh. So they're going to have to find a way to replace that. But this is a team that drafts very well. They know what they're doing, and I can't count Pittsburgh out until I see it.
I think with Pittsburgh, their issues were more on the defensive side. So I wish that they had moved over their efforts to the defensive side. And now that they've lost Javon Hargrave, I think that's one of the bigger losses that not a whole lot of people are making enough of a deal about. And
Absolutely.
They're going to get they regret. And to me, that's going to be a big loss. And I think that they're going to have to address that in the draft. Unfortunately for them, they don't have a first-round pick this year. And they're going to have to spend a day 2, possibly even a day 3 pick trying to find that replacement for a guy that was probably the number 2 or the number 3 defensive tackle in this free agency class. It's going to be very hard to replace that.
I don't know so much. Yes, it'll be hard to replace him, but that defense is a top 3, maybe even, if you're not thinking that high, maybe a top 5 defense in this league. So I don't know how much of that loss is going to necessarily hurt the defense. With the pass rush that they have right now, they're going to be more than fine on defense. I think, like we're all saying, and I think the world knows, this team really just relies on the quarterback play. So, yes, though big loss, I think that defense should be just fine, and they'll be fine going into the season.
Nick, would you agree with that?
I still think it's just a huge loss. I understand they have a really good defense, and there's a lot of other good players on that defensive line, like Tuitt and Hayward, and they franchise tagged Bud Dupree to bring him back. But Javon Hargrave meant a lot to that run defense, and I think you're having a huge hole to fill there. But the one thing, like I said, that helps them, they tend to draft very well. So even though they don't have that first round pick, I wouldn't put past Pittsburgh to find a gem in the later rounds.
Yeah, I think that Pittsburgh's problems they have to address them in the draft. I think that free agency they didn't have enough cap space to truly go after guys this year. So their problems need to be addressed in the draft. And you can even argue that Minkah Fitzpatrick is their first round pick this year, and
He is,
definitely
yeah.
worth that first round pick for sure. But going into this draft is where I think they'll address more on the defensive side of the ball. And with Javon Hargrave, I think their first pick should be a defensive tackle. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. That is, in my opinion, is where they need to go, because that defense at top speed can be the number one defense in the NFL. And if you lose such a valuable piece like Hargrave, you can regress really easily. So I think that they really should try to find a plug-and-play guy, put him right there where Hargrave was, and pretend like, nothing much else happened. So to me, that's where Pittsburgh needs to go. The fact that they lost him makes my grade for them C-. I don't think they got better in free agency thus far. So C- it is for the Steelers. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would say C- as well. They did what they could with what they had, but losing Javon Hargrave is just too big for me to give them any higher.
Maybe I just like the Steelers more. I'm going to go C+. I don't think they did anything great, but I think they got a tad better on the offensive side of the ball. And we'll see. They're one of those question mark teams. We have no idea what's going to happen with them, so we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, I'll give them a C+.
Yeah. Let's move now from Pittsburgh to Cincinnati, the team that is on the clock currently with the number 1 overall pick. Not a whole lot of Cincinnati action in free agency. They do get Trey Waynes for their cornerback tandem. He replaces Darqueze Dennard, former first-round pick, one former first-rounder for another. Both probably in need of a change of scenery. So Trey Waynes enters into Cincy's secondary. They get DJ Reader at nose tackle, which was a huge get for them. Definitely their best get by far. He was huge in Houston and stopping the run, and he'll be doing the same thing in Cincinnati. What do you guys think of the minimalistic moves that Cincinnati's made so far?
I think it's a bit some good, some bad. And to me, the good is DJ Reader, one of the more unheralded defensive tackles in the league. But make no mistake about it, he's a wrecker there. And I know you know that, Jeremy, being a Texans fan. You've seen it. But giving Trey Waynes that much money, that one left me scratching my head. And a lot of things the Bengals do leave me scratching my head, and that's one of them. And I find it interesting that they gave 3 years, $42 million to Trey Waynes, and they gave only 1 year, $4 million to Mackenzie Alexander. And I don't think anybody's going to convince me there's much separating those two corners. So why the big pay difference? That's just such a weird move to me, and that I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, Sean, what are you thinking?
To be completely honest with you, Cincinnati doesn't really just get my juices flowing at all, especially with what they're doing in free agency. I think they know that they're going to be mediocre this year. Even with getting Joe Burrow, they understand where their place is, especially when the 3 other teams in your division are better than you. So I think being minimalistic is sometimes more than less. They know that, listen, we need to keep some cap room and we need to, play this right. And I think, again, you have a head coach that was with a team that spent a lot of money in, free agency, and it didn't necessarily work out too well, especially now seeing it. So it'll be interesting to see what Cincinnati does going into the draft. I'm almost positive they'll go heavy on the defense and draft a quarterback, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Let's just do quick grades for the Bengals. I think we've said all that we could for the Bengals so far.
Yeah, I'll give them a
Uh,
C. Just average. They didn't really do much. They didn't do terrible. They were just average.
I would give him a B minus. As much as I hate the Trey Wayne signing, I love the DJ Reader signing that much that I'm gonna give it a B
Yeah.
minus.
I do like the DJ Reader signing. Because of the DJ Reader signing, they get better. So I'll give them a C plus. We'll go with that. But let's move from one team that's done very little to one team that's done a whole lot. The Cleveland Browns. So they've made many signings in free agency already. I think I got 8 on my sheet right here. So we'll start out with Jack Conklin, the Titans tackle from a year ago. Austin Hooper was the first signing of free agency. He comes from Atlanta. And then Case Keenum to be a backup for Baker Mayfield. Definitely one of the better backups in the league. You also get Carl Joseph, former first-round pick from the Raiders. So those 4 signings, I mean, not as much Case Keenum, but Conklin, Hooper, and Carl Joseph, those 3 signings have me kicking the tires a little bit on Cleveland, and maybe they're a team that we should be looking out for a little bit as a potential under-the-radar threat in 2020. Would y'all agree with that?
Jeremy, to be completely honest, I feel like we said the same thing last year. So with Cleveland, you can never really tell. I do like some of the signings. I think we talked about Austin Hooper this morning on HTF. I think none of us liked the signing. They just threw money at a decently productive tight end. But I actually do like the Conklin, and I do like Andrew Sendejo. I think those 2 really improve their team a lot. But, Case Keenum, he'll never play. He threw some money at him. Carl Joseph, he's not really the greatest safety in the world. He's, he'll get the work done every once in a while. But I think this is the perfect example of new coach wanting it to be his team and signing a guy like Austin Hooper to a crazy contract just to get a different tight end when you have a perfectly good one sitting on your bench.
Yeah, a question. When you have David Njoku, you invested a first-round pick in, and even though I know Stefanski's not the one who did that, he still was a first-round pick, and he showed some promise despite the injury. That this is a move. Obviously, Stefanski wanted his guy, and he got it. We can criticize the money they gave him, but I'm not really going to because Jimmy Graham got only $3 million less than Austin Hooper, and Austin Hooper is just miles better than Jimmy Graham, and that's just kind of what the market's been. I really like the Jack Conklin move because they need guys on that line to protect Baker Mayfield, and getting a guy like that who's a proven right tackle in the league allows them to potentially draft a left tackle now with as high as they're picking. So I like that move, and everything else is just kind of depth pieces for Cleveland just to kind of fill out the roster. But losing Joe Schobert is a big loss in the middle of that defense, so they're going to have to find a way to pick that up along the way.
Yeah, Joe Schobert does go to Jacksonville, and that's one of probably their biggest loss. And Christian Kirksey also goes to Green Bay, so the linebackers take a hit. But I remember in the last 2 mock drafts that HTF has done, we've mocked tackles to Cleveland at number 10. They go and they get Jack Conklin, and Jack Conklin fills that void, and he's probably comparable, if not better, than any of the guys they could have gotten at 10. So now with both Kirksey and Schobert leaving, would you say that linebacker is where the Browns go with their first pick at 10? Either of you can take this one.
Yeah, I personally think they view Conklin as one of those top picks that, like, hey, we spent the money on Conklin. We don't necessarily need to go offensive line as much. I still do think they go offensive line, but I think with this team, there's so many question marks for all of the different positions that I think they go, knowing the Cleveland Browns, they probably will go somebody on defense, maybe a linebacker or a defensive tackle. But I wouldn't be shocked if they went offensive line just to create depth and make sure, God forbid, if Conklin goes down or another offensive lineman goes down, we have a first or second rounder ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think you still go left tackle because Jack Conklin is a right tackle. He's not a left tackle, and left tackle's more important in this league, and especially for Baker Mayfield's sake, since it's his blind side. And this is you have 4 studs at left tackle, and you're probably going to have your pick of at least one of them. So I think Cleveland needs to go left tackle because you have to protect the quarterback. When you have a young franchise quarterback, you have to protect him, and Cleveland needs to do that or they're not going to win football games.
So, what do we think of the Browns right now? Let's throw a grade on them. I'm pretty favorable of this offseason. I really like what they've done in multiple signings. I think Conklin is one of the more underrated signings of the offseason, and I don't hate the Hooper signing as much as you guys did this morning. I think Kevin Stefanski loves the 2 tight end set. In Minnesota last year, he used the 2 tight end set more than any other offensive coordinator in the NFL. So he was like, let me go and get the best tight end on the market and let me create the best tight end tandem in the league. And you can't tell me that Hooper and Njoku, there's a better tight end pair than those 2. So I like what they did there. I don't necessarily think he'll be as productive as he was in Atlanta, but I don't think that's necessarily what he needs to be in Cleveland. Carl Joseph's a good signing. Sendejo, another good signing. I'm going to give Cleveland a B+ here. I really like what they've done.
Yeah, I'm going to give him a B. I think I like the moves they did. I think it's a much smarter approach to free agency than it was last year for them. And with the Hooper, with the 2 tight end set that Stefanski likes to use, like you said, he gets to use Hooper and Njoku, and that's a big upgrade over Kyle Rudolph and an unknown commodity in Irv Smith.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I think I'm just going to go – oh,
go ahead, Sean.
Do you have something?
Go ahead, Sean.
No, I think I'm going to go B-. I do agree with Nick, though. Like, I do think they will take a tackle in the first round. Probably, if Becton goes higher, I'd say probably Andrew Thomas or Wills. Like, I think that's a solid option. But Chris Hubbard obviously isn't the answer to move over to left tackle from the right side. So yeah. I would say B- here because I do like the Jack Conklin over to the right because obviously Hubbard is not really that great over on that side regardless. But, they made some solid picks. I like this Sendejo for the safety. So I'll give him a B-.
All right. So favorable for the Browns. Let's shift gears from the north to the west and the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. It's hard to improve a team that just won a Super Bowl, and they haven't done a whole lot. Kendall Fuller is going back to Washington. He came in for the Alex Smith trade, is going back to where he came from, and Emmanuel Ogbah finds a new home in Miami. But they get Antonio Hamilton, cornerback, and Mike Remmers, offensive line, both from the New York Giants. There's not much to say about Kansas City, although I'll ask you guys this. How much does the loss of Kendall Fuller hurt Kansas City's secondary?
I think that it's a pretty big loss because that's kind of been their weakness.
Your number one corner.
And that's your number one corner. It's been kind of a weakness, so they're going to have to fill that void definitely in the draft. And I think that a lot of these teams in the draft need free agent cornerbacks, and I don't know if there's that many that are first round worthy. So I don't know if they're going to find that game changer sitting at 32. But in regards to what they did, I mean, you re-signed Chris Jones or franchise tagged him, and that's the big key. Just keep Chris Jones and keep full sell moving because you have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. You just won a Super Bowl. You're going to compete for Super Bowls for the next 15 years with that guy at quarterback. So just lock down Chris Jones like they did and continue going. That's all they needed to do, and that's what they did.
Yeah. Sean, do you think that Fuller is going to be a huge loss for Kansas City?
I actually think a couple of the people that lost will be a loss for Kansas City. I think Fuller, of course, that's going to hurt them in the secondary. They were already not great in the secondary without Fuller. Matthew makes it a little better. He cleans up a lot of the bad things that happen in that secondary. But right. Ogbah, I think, leaving is a big hit. And I do think Wisniewski is another big loss for Kansas City. Granted, again, like Nick said, when you have that quarterback, really the losses don't seem as painful or terrible. But I think when you might think about losing Sammy Watkins, I know we don't know what's going on with that situation, if he's going to take a year off, or I have no idea. But you have good pieces on offense that'll get you a couple solid wins. But yeah, they didn't take a big dip, but they lost some key pieces that they'll have to replace with either mid-level free agents or just draft some rookies.
Yeah. So I think it's hard to give Kansas City a grade here, given that their offseason seems a little bit incomplete. But it kind of the losses now. I think they're going to have to address those in the draft. I mean, is there someone in free agency though that you could see Kansas City saying, giving a contract to possibly?
Maybe a veteran in the back end, like a Tony Jefferson or a Brandon
Jefferson.
Carr.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could see some guys like that. They kind of fit that team that's in a win now mode. Veterans who could step right in and continue going. So, I could see guys like that.
Sean, is there anyone in mind you think that Kansas City could be looking out for?
I have one, and I don't know if it'll happen because I don't know. I don't think the money's right. It would have to, this guy would really need to take a money hit. But Logan Ryan, I think that would be a solid option at corner. But again, some of these guys just want too much money right now.
Yeah.
But I think give it a couple days, and some of these guys will start to really understand. Okay, my market's not that big. Let me take a little bit less money. Possibly go to Kansas City and compete for a Super Bowl.
It wouldn't surprise me if Xavier Rhodes is wearing Kansas City Chiefs colors next year either. That's someone I think that would be a little more splashier of a signing. That it makes sense. I mean, Antonio Hamilton is a corner, so they have that. But is Antonio Hamilton gonna step into Kendall Fuller's role right away? I don't think so. So I think that Xavier Rhodes makes sense. Logan Ryan I think makes sense. The Tony Jefferson and Brandon Carr, all of those make sense. I think they have to make a move to get a veteran secondary member. So for now, I'm going to rule this incomplete because I do think the Chiefs will make some moves. And I think they're going to wait until the market slowly decreases because then that's when things are going to start working in their favor.
Yeah, I'd leave it at a C. Just there's nothing that they did that got worse for them really. That to me, like I understand the Kendall Fuller is a pretty big hit to that secondary, but I just keep going back to the quarterback. I think he's gonna bail you out of anything.
Right.
Yeah, I'd give it like a C as well. The Antonio Hamilton and Mike Rimmer signings are depth signings. Mm-hmm. They are probably not going to play a lot of minutes, so really they're just losing pieces. Kansas City does not have a lot of money left to spend. I think what they can do is let Sammy Watkins go, and they can create about $6 million in cap with that move. If he's going to retire, you just put him on the reserve retired list, and you have some dead money involved.
Retire, you think?
That's what he's been talking about for the past couple months, and I think he's really serious about it. Granted, you're on one of the best teams in the league. I kind of question that.
You get the opportunity to go out on top, so
that's an option. I don't think he would necessarily retire forever. I think he just wants to take a year off. But if I'm Kansas City, listen, you have a bunch of good pieces at wide receiver. Yeah. I would either release him or trade him. You're going to have $7 million in dead cap anyway, but you might be able to get some money back because he's your highest paid player on your roster right now.
Right.
So
it's crazy to think. Sammy Watkins, the highest paid Chief. All right, let's move on to a team that didn't do a whole lot of spending to a team that did a whole lot of spending with I have to get used to this, the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Las Vegas Raiders, they signed 9 key pieces that I've listed. So in order from where I have it on my list, you have Corey Littleton from the Rams, a huge signing for them, going to play middle linebacker for them next season. Carl Nassib, also a huge add, can be in that front 7. Malik Collins, Jeff Heath, Nick Kwiatkowski, all of these on the defensive side, Eli Apple. They also get Nelson Aguilar to add to their receiver depth, Jason Witten, and of course Marcus Mariota. So Marcus Mariota's deal also is going to pay him about $8.5 million a year for the next 2 seasons, which that's a bit of an interesting number, I would say. given that he's only going to be a backup. He's probably going to be one of the more handsomely paid backups in the league. But Sean, is he really a backup?
Yeah, he's a backup. They're paying Derek Carr too much money for him not to be a backup. Now, this could be a situation like Tennessee. We have no idea. Like, nobody thought Ryan Tannehill was going to come in and take the starting job over Mariota. So, I do think Marcus Mariota has potential to possibly get playing time in a weird offense type of deal, kind of like a Robert Griffin III every once in a while will come in, do a wildcat offense. I think that's where a lot of that money is coming from, is John Gruden thinking, oh my God, I can do some weird offensive schemes with this guy. Let me pay him a little extra to make sure I get him. But this free agency for the Raiders just reminds me a lot of what they usually do. The past couple years, they get a lot of players, usually on decently sized contracts. Corey Littleton comes to mind. That's a really great deal. I like Carl Nassib. Eli Apple, he's a decent corner. I actually like the Nelson Aguilar deal. I think you're getting him on a prove-it deal, a speedy wide receiver that'll help Derek Carr. I do like what the Raiders did, but again, it's going to come down to how they actually play and perform. And with the team they have in place, I think they've got a good enough team to make a run.
Yeah. A lot of these signings to me they just feel a little weird to me. It's a very weird phase that the Raiders in, because I think they're just stuck in mediocrity, like I kind of mentioned about Miami earlier. They're just stuck in that middle, and I think these signings kind of keep them there. Like, I love the Corey Littleton signing, and Carl Nassib's a guy with a high motor, and he'll fit well with John Gruden, but I'm looking more and more at the signings, and like Jeff Heath was brought in to replace Carl Joseph. Nick Kwiatkowski was brought in to replace Tahir Whitehead. I don't see the value there at all. Malik Collins is just a depth piece, and Eli Apple and Nelson Aguilar have been rolling around now because they can't prove themselves in this league. And then Jason Witten, at this point in his career, I mean, maybe a safety blanket for Derek Carr. I mean, that's the only I can think of there. And I think Mariota, his contract, it is quite hefty for a backup, and I think that he's there basically just to push Derek Carr. And if Derek Carr really, really turns out to turn a corner downward in his career here, then Mariota could see some action.
I think, like, the Littleton signing is, to me, the most impressive out of all of these. I think he could have even gotten a little bit more money. I was surprised that he only got paid $11 or so million a year. But for me, a lot of these are depth signings, and I think that it doesn't it makes them better, but it doesn't put them over the top. Like, I don't think Vegas is turning from a non-playoff team to a playoff team with these moves.
I think they're the second best team in the AFC West. Like, you look at the other teams.
I actually don't think that can be said right now. I think that Denver and the Chargers both got a little bit better. I think that Denver is definitely better than the Vegas Raiders right now, and I will say that with
wow, okay,
they were 7-9. They were 7-9 last year. Another year with Drew Lock. They get Melvin Gordon adds to them. Jarrell Casey. I think they got a lot better, and I think that AJ Boye is not a huge kind of shoulders the blow from losing Chris Harris. I think that Las Vegas has not done enough to maintain the second best team in the West. I don't think they're there yet anymore.
Well, listen, again, this division is going to be really weird. It actually reminds me a lot of the AFC East, and you have a really solid number one, and then the rest are kind of in a flux.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Last year the Vegas Raiders showed a lot of heart. A lot of pride, which I haven't noticed out of the Raiders in many years. So I think John Gruden's getting to them. And though I do think Denver has a little bit more talent, I think when it comes down to it, I think the Raiders will have the better record because of, again, like I said with previous teams, coaching matters. And I don't know if I trust Denver's coaching more than the Raiders coaching at this point.
Yeah. These we're kind of spilling into Denver here, so I just want to close the chapter on Vegas before we go strictly into Denver. What grade are we giving the Raiders with their offseason thus far?
I'll give them a C plus.
C plus.
C plus.
C plus. Sean, what are we on?
Wow. I was gonna go B. I think I like what they did.
Yeah, I'll go somewhere in the middle. I'll go B minus. I think that they've definitely gotten better. The Littleton signing definitely helps that, and I think that what we're looking at when Gruden took over 2 years ago, he was really looking to just change. And when you do the same thing, you get the same results. And with Gruden and the Raiders right now, they're doing things differently. There's hype around the team with going to a new city. I think that it will help them, but it still makes them nowhere near close to where Kansas City is right now. B minus for the Raiders. Now let's move fully into Denver here. We have Melvin Gordon coming from the Chargers. Jarrell Casey coming in a gimme trade with Denver, traded for a 7th-round pick, which was a steal. Graham Glasgow comes in from Detroit, replacing Connor McGovern. What do you guys think about what Denver's done so far? They also get A.J. Boye to replace Chris Harris Jr., who goes to the Chargers. So what do you guys think with Denver's offseason thus far?
I think it's great what they've done. I mean, the Melvin Gordon one grabs all the headlines, and it's going to be a really exciting 1-2 punch with him and Lindsey, kind of like it was with him and Eckler. It's kind of, I think, a lot of similarities you can draw there. But getting a guy like Graham Glasgow, who's a proven guy on that line, I mean, that's not really a very good offensive line, and you got to protect your rookie quarterback, or your second-year quarterback rather. So Graham Glasgow is a pretty good signing to get into there, and the Jarrell Casey, that's like you said, that's a steal. Mm-hmm. This is a Pro Bowl type caliber player, and you got him for that big of a bargain. And Bouye coming in does soften the blow of Chris Harris, and they're kind of similar build, similar stature. Chris Harris is more of a slot guy, so we'll have to see who can step up in that for them. I'd like to see them bring back Shelby Harris on the line. I think he's a very solid presence, and he's kind of a guy who's out there, and the market for him is kind of wishy-washy right now, and I think the Denver could maybe bring him back. But all in all, this is a really solid free agency for Denver, and I like the way they're heading.
Mm-hmm. Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm a fan of a couple of the moves. I think, like you said, Nick, the Graham Glasgow signing, honestly, is a really good signing. He's only missed 4 games in his entire career. He's given up 0 sacks. $11 million a year for a quality center like that is worth it. I love the Jarrell Casey signing or trade for a 7th-round pick. Mm-hmm. Like, pretty much you're trading him for cap room. They were just trying to dump some cap. Tennessee was. So I think you get a guy like him to be on your line is going to really improve your team. The Melvin Gordon one is the one I'm not so big a fan of. Like, I get that's going to be the splashy move. He was a top 10 running back, not last year, but the year before that, and with injuries, it plagued him. I don't think Denver needed to make that move. And I think if I'm a Denver fan or if I'm just an NFL fan in general, I'm really keeping a close eye on how they're going to handle this situation. Obviously, they're probably going to let one of the running backs go. But what happens if Melvin Gordon comes in and he kind of performs like the 2019 Melvin Gordon? Do you regret paying him that money and then giving up Royce Freeman? I just don't love that fit as much as some others might.
Yeah. I mean, Philip Lindsay is still there, a 1,000-yard season last year and a 1,000-yard season the year before that. And honestly, Melvin Gordon is there to be running back too. I don't see how he can supplant Philip Lindsay just, all of a sudden.
But that's the thing. I don't think Melvin Gordon is going in there thinking he's RB2. I think he thinks he's coming in there being the starting running back.
I think he's naive to think that.
Well,
but what I will say is this: Melvin Gordon is. I think they will give Melvin Gordon a shot, and I think it's worth getting him for a depth piece. $8 million is a lot for a running back. I will agree with that, but I mean, hey, if you getting them. Look, the Chargers are gonna miss him, and you getting him is only that much more of a gain for you and a loss for the Chargers. So I think that part of that is we've seen a lot of interdivisional moves. You saw that with Melvin Gordon. You saw it with Chris Harris, who's going to the Chargers now. So basically, what it was a swap for Gordon and Chris Harris.
Yeah, and listen, like I get I don't think the Chargers are going to be too upset with losing Melvin Gordon. I think they love what they have in Austin Eckler, and I think I'm more just a cautious. Like, listen, Philip Lindsay. I didn't like the split carries with Royce Freeman anyway. I was like, listen, give Philip Lindsay the ball. He's a Pro Bowl running back when you give him the ball. I don't love Denver doing this. They have so many other needs on that team than at running back. And I feel like they're just like, oh, well, Melvin Gordon. Absolutely. So I feel like, listen, more power to him. They gave him the money. We'll see how it works out. But I feel like you could have easily went with Royce Freeman and Philip Lindsay and been more than okay at running back without having to spend $8 million
One
per
last
year.
thing that I want to address with Denver before we move on to the Chargers. They have 3 defensive linemen that are still free agents, and to me, I'm surprised they haven't at least signed one of these guys. Derek Wolfe, Adam Gotsis, Shelby Harris, all of them free agents. And the only real change they've made to their defensive line is adding Jarrell Casey. But these guys are more defensive ends with Wolfe, Gotsis, and Harris. Pick one to keep, pick one to let walk, and pick one that you want to see on your team. Starting with Nick.
See on my team. Well, I guess I'd have to say Shelby Harris. I'd love to see that on my team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would love to see that. I mean, but at the same time, I think it's smart for Denver to go after him. Between Gostis and Wolf, I'd probably keep Wolf. He's been there a little longer, and he kind of fits what Denver likes there. I mean, he's a high motor guy, and he's familiar with the system for these many years. So I think Derek Wolf probably is the guy.
So Derek Wolfe is the one you would want on your team, right?
No, Shelby Harris is.
So Shelby Harris is the one you want for Tampa. Derek Wolfe is the one you want for Denver, and Adam Gotsis is the one that can walk.
Hold on, time out.
Correct.
Nick, you're a Tampa Bay Bucks fan?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. See, this just made it 100% worse. If I would have known that at the beginning, I probably would have never came on this podcast. That makes it 100% worse.
Oop. Well, you're stuck now.
Yeah, I guess.
Only an hour 22 minutes later.
Yeah, jeez. Okay, well, no, I'm pretty much saying the same thing as Nick. I probably would go Derek Wolfe on my team instead of Shelby Harris because if I'm going like Patriots, that's like my team, I would probably go Derek Wolfe because he's just a better fit. But I think when it comes to Denver, you just let Adam Gostis walk. He's somebody that you can lose and you can make up. But I feel like you have to re-sign either Shelby Harris or Derek Wolfe. You have to get one of those guys back to lessen the blow of that defensive line.
Yeah, I think it's 50-50, honestly. But I agree with you, Sean. They need to bring at least one of these guys back. If they can bring both of them back, more power to them. This also probably means they're going to get a defensive end in the draft. And in a year where there's not too many defensive ends, I would expect them to go pretty early with a D end in the draft. I think Shelby Harris is the slightly more talented one. I think he's the one with a little bit more upside. So I would pick him for Denver, and then I'll take Derek Wolfe as the 1B, and then I would let Adam Gotsis walk as well. But I do think that Adam Gotsis could make an impact somewhere in 2020. I think that it would be in like a third down role. Mm-hmm. Maybe for a team like Dallas that could use a little more defensive line help. So, Denver, what grade are we giving them?
I'm going to give them a solid B. I like what they did, and I think they definitely got better, and they're going for it, coming off a strong finish to last year.
Mm-hmm. Sean, what you feeling?
Yeah, I'd give them a B minus.
Mhm.
They definitely improved on the offensive line and defensive line, but I'm still confused on the Melvin Gordon front. So I'll go B minus.
I'm going to give him a B minus as well because I think that the one move that I think really stands out here is the Jarrell Casey trade, and that's what moves them from a little bit above average from average. So Jarrell Casey pushes them to a B minus for me. Now we'll move to the final team in the AFC West, the LA Chargers. No more Phillip Rivers after 16 years. He departs for Indianapolis. Melvin Gordon departs to Denver, but they do get Chris Harris out of it. Linval Joseph comes in from Minnesota. Brian Bulaga coming in from Green Bay. They've made some nice, despite losing Phillip Rivers, they've made some nice moves here, which I think, the Chargers don't get any worse, to be honest.
I think that, first of all, I think the Chargers, and it goes in with my point, I think they're going to draft a quarterback at 6, and they're bringing in proven guys in this league, and I think whoever steps into that situation has it made. You're not going to some bad franchise. You're not going to a bad team per se. You're going to a team with some pretty good players on it, and they just added some more veterans to this team. So I think the big winner of the Charger situation is whatever rookie quarterback that they draft. Analyzing what they have, Brian Bulaga specifically, if perhaps Tua Tagovailoa becomes the pick at 6, if Miami passes on him and takes Herbert or something like that, Brian Bulaga becomes really valuable because then he's protecting Tua's blind side. So you have to look at it from that perspective. And then Chris Harris, Linval Joseph, guys who, although they did not have the years last year that they've had in their earlier careers, they're obviously in their 30s now. They're good little guys to bring in and more depth pieces, and I don't think they broke the bank really for them at this stage in their career. So it's a solid little offseason for the Chargers.
Yeah, what do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I actually think the Brian Bulaga signing is amazing for them. It brings some much needed help to the offensive line. Chris Harris Jr. will definitely help that secondary and make that defense just more dominant than they already are. My biggest thing is, we don't really know what the quarterback situation is going to be. I feel like the opening day quarterback is going to be Tyrod Taylor. So a little bit different of a quarterback. I personally think they go Justin Herbert. That's who I think will be there at 6. But that's two different quarterbacks. So you got Tyrod Taylor, who is the almost complete opposite of Justin Herbert. So it'll be interesting to see how they play it. I think they might have improved a little bit, but they didn't drastically change their team to make them any type of contender or to maybe improve their win total. I think they actually lost more pieces than I think they would have liked to lose, like losing Thomas Davis or Derek Watt, who was a solid fullback for them. Yeah. But we'll see. I think they might have improved by a win, but especially in this division, they don't really stand a chance until they have a solid quarterback that can improve their team.
For me, with the Chargers, I think more of the reason why they regressed this past year was because they just couldn't stay healthy. Melvin Gordon was hurt.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they found a replacement in Austin Eckler, which is probably an upgrade. If we're being totally real. They also Derwin James was hurt for almost the entire season, if not the entire season. So him coming back and adding Chris Harris with Desmond King, that creates quite arguably the best secondary in the AFC. If it's not the best, it's a top 3 secondary. Chris Harris is the number 1 corner. Desmond King can be a number 1 corner. Derwin James is one of the best safeties in the NFL. They have one of the best secondaries in the game, and it's going to be very difficult to beat them from that point. They get better on the defensive line with Linval Joseph. They get better on the offensive line with Brian Bulaga. So, for me, the Chargers got better, and they're one of the more improved teams in the AFC. So, for me, the Chargers, I might have to give them an A-. I really like what they've done. Even with losing Phillip Rivers, I think that it was time to move on, and they need, in order to move to the next step, they need to go and they need to get a rookie quarterback. Tyrod Taylor mentored Baker Mayfield, so they have a guy that's done what he's about to do before, where he's going to probably start, 3 to 6 games and then hand it off to whoever they draft. I really like what the Chargers have done. I'm really impressed. A-.
Yeah, I like that. I'd go B+. And when you're talking about the secondary, you can't forget Casey Hayward as well. That's another guy who's another number one. You have 3 number 1 corners potentially on your team, and one of the better safeties in the league, in Derwin James, next to Nazir Adderley. I mean, that may be the best secondary in football, to be honest. I mean, if we were to map it out. But, yeah, I'd give them a B+ for what they did. I really like what they did. These are smart signings. That's what I look for, is I like smart. They didn't break the bank for any of these. They all make sense. So I think the Chargers improved a lot. So B+.
Yeah, I think I would just go B. They made great signings, but I just don't think they got exponentially better that will improve their team by so much. So, yeah, I'll just go solid B.
Solid B. All right. So let's move on to our final division, the AFC South. And we'll start off with the defending champion Texans.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
we can start
we're gonna rip off the Band-Aid.
Okay.
We're gonna rip off the Band-Aid. So I think they've had a perfect offseason.
Oh my God!
If you take away the fact that they lost their number 1 receiver, their top defensive tackle, and other than that, can't really complain. I think that they're, look, I'm not going to defend this move any more than I already somewhat have. I've explained the logic. I'm not going to defend it anymore. DeAndre Hopkins should still be a Texan. The fact that he isn't is absolutely blasphemous. But they have, and David Johnson, look, I think that David Johnson can be good for the Texans, but it will always come with, oh, you gave up DeAndre Hopkins for him. I hope that in 9 months from now or in a year from now that this Hopkins trade will look a lot like the Clowney trade did, where it won't be seen as that big of a loss. And if we're being honest, the Clowney trade that they made a year ago, Houston, although they appeared to be on the losing side at first glance, they didn't really lose that trade a whole lot, especially if Clowney walks at the end of if Clowney doesn't return to Seattle. So I hope that that's the case with this trade. I'm not as optimistic about that as I was with the Clowney trade. Randall Cobb's okay. I'm not thrilled about that signing. I don't think there's much else to say about the Texans other than, Hopkins should still be here. Reader walking was expected, but it's been a week now. I've recovered somewhat.
Jeremy, it's just like Tom Brady, man. You just have to. It's going to be tough, but you're going to get through it, and it's going to be okay. But no, to be completely honest with you, everybody was going crazy over the DeAndre Hopkins trade, and I think the only reason people really was it's like you didn't get a lot back. Like, yeah, you got David Johnson, who's injury prone, but you didn't get a first-round pick. I think if you would have got a first-round pick, people would have been more inclined to be like, you know what, you're not going to pay him. You don't want to pay him top receiver money, which I don't blame you guys. Like, yes, Hopkins is probably, if not the best, one of the top receivers in the league.
Hopkins wanted a deal in his age 28 or 29 season because he would have gotten a new deal, I think, next season. He would have wanted $18 to $20 million entering his age 29 season. Which is a lot.
It depends on the team. So I can totally understand why you guys traded him. I can totally understand why the Texans traded him.
It's just the compensation in return.
Exactly. And I think that's what is going to end up. The whole point is Hopkins walked out and said a couple nasty things about your head coach and GM. And that's going to end up hurting the mantra of Houston. They can do whatever they want, but I think if I'm a player and I'm hearing what some of these respected players are saying about the Houston Texans and Bill O'Brien, it makes me less inclined to come or less inclined to play for a team that has a head coach and GM that maybe doesn't make the smartest decisions when it comes to free agency, trades, or just talking to his players.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Nick, what do you got to add?
I uh, I just still don't get it. I know you mapped it out, the reason why, and there's some logic to it, I guess. But my issue is down the line, Bill O'Brien's not going to be here to even see how this all plays out. I think he's gone probably midway into this year, or even at the end of this year, most likely, based on what's going on. I don't see them being competitive, or they'll be competitive because they have the quarterback, but I don't see them being a contender whatsoever. And you just like I said it over and over, you just don't trade. You don't trade certain players, and you don't trade DeAndre Hopkins. He's a top 5 receiver in this league. Some would argue he's the most talented receiver in the league. You don't trade him. He's still in his prime, and I can compare that to Julio Jones. They gave him the contract Atlanta did not too long ago, and now he's in his 30s. Has anybody seen any decline in Julio Jones's game? Are we going to see some massive decline in DeAndre Hopkins' game? I mean, you have to pay your best players, and you just don't trade them when you're done using them because you haven't even maximized the full potential of DeAndre Hopkins on this team because you haven't won anything.
Mm-hmm. All right, quick grades on the Texans.
You want to go, Nick?
F. All right, let's move on.
It's an F, yeah. Easy.
Yeah, you didn't get better. It's just hard to make a case that they've gotten better. I don't hate the Randall Cobb signing. I don't hate the Eric Murray signing. I don't hate the Brent Cavale signing. I don't hate the signings that they've made. It's just you lost your best player, and not much else you can do about that. So
I think honestly, until Bill O'Brien stops trying to be Bill Belichick Jr., the Texans will not win anything.
Yep, agreed. Now let's move on quickly to the Titans. A team that hasn't made too many outside acquisitions. The only one that they've made thus far in free agency is Vic Beasley coming in from Atlanta. They did sign Tannehill to a huge contract, $91 million contract at that, guaranteed, I believe, right? $91 million guaranteed? Was it?
91 guaranteed, and it's like 114 with like
118.
Yeah.
So what is that?
Really?
Like, yeah.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah. Tannehill. That's really all that you can say about this. Like, okay, if you are writing a check for Ryan Tannehill, how much do you give him? Sean, quick number.
I would have given him the Teddy Bridgewater contract, $60 million.
That's fair. Nick, what are you giving him?
Yeah, I have spot on. The fact that they gave this man $118 million, $90 million guaranteed, mistake. That's all I can say about it.
I think if he played like he did last year for 2 or 3 seasons, then maybe you give that to him. But he's a quarterback in his 30s who only has had one really good season. Reminds me a little bit of the Brock Osweiler deal. I mean, the only difference is, I guess, Ryan Tannehill has had a little bit more time to prove that he's worth that deal. But I would go a little bit higher than the Bridgewater deal because he did lead the team to the AFC Championship. So I'd give him maybe like 365, 366, maybe give him $22 million a year versus 20. Like nothing too much greater than that. But yeah, that's the move I'd give him. What are we giving the Titans for this minimalistic offseason they've had so far?
Yeah, I don't think they lost much outside of Jarrell Casey, which is a pretty big loss. No, I don't want to understate that. So I'm gonna put them right at a C, and keeping Derrick Henry is a big part of that C grade.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the Ryan Tannehill deal just reeks of desperation. I don't think they see a quarterback coming to them anytime soon that's really going to take the NFL by storm. So they're like, listen, let's just give this guy a bunch of money and hope that we can replicate what we did last year. But Ryan Tannehill didn't lead them to the AFC Championship.
Nope.
Their running back did. And I think you're pretty much just replacing Vic Beasley with Jarrell Casey. So that's a flop. So yeah, I would say probably like a C- just because I don't like the Ryan Tannehill deal. I do agree you should not have paid Derrick Henry because if you look at running backs and how they're being formulated, they take a drop off every like 2 years. Todd Gurley, perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't disagree with not paying him, but I just don't think you pay Ryan Tannehill that much money.
All right. Yeah, I think C is a good number, is a good grade for the Titans. I think that they don't get better with these moves. They don't get worse either because they don't really lose much. So yeah, a C for them. Let's move quickly on to Indianapolis. They get a new quarterback in Phillip Rivers, new defensive tackle in DeForest Buckner, cost them their first round pick. What did you guys feel about that trade with Buckner and the Niners? Was he worth that pick for Indianapolis?
Absolutely, because if you're thinking about like specifically a defensive tackle, it's Derek Brown and Javon Kinlaw. While there's a lot to love about those guys, there really is a lot to love about DeForest Buckner, and I've already seen what DeForest Buckner is in the league. So if that's your first round pick, and it's a guy who is entering his prime now, and he's already accomplished a good amount in this league, that's a slam dunk. So I think it's a great trade by Indianapolis.
Yeah, Sean, who won that trade, Indy or San Francisco?
I think Indy. When you think about it, Indianapolis is going to have to take the cap hit, and San Francisco is doing what the Rams didn't. San Francisco understands, listen, we're going to have to pay some of these guys in a couple of years. We're not going to be able to pay Buckner. So let's get a draft pick back, not have to pay that guy for a couple of years, and just let Buckner go. So I think Indianapolis ended up winning the trade because they get a player right now that can help them and makes that defense just even better than it already is. Yeah. I think Indianapolis definitely won the trade. But listen, they lost Brian Hoyer, so that's a big loss to the Colts in this team. Brian Hoyer's a big loss.
Mm-hmm. But they get Phillip Rivers, who they spent $25 million on. We'll do what we did with Tannehill. I'm going to give you a blank check. How much do you write for Phillip Rivers?
I would say, I honestly like the contract. I think $25 million is pretty good. For the market, for the way markets are going for quarterbacks, and taking into, I think this division is pretty wide open. Phillip Rivers, if anything, is going to give you a fighting chance and more of a chance than Jacoby Brissett.
Okay, so $25 million. Fair. All right.
Yeah.
Would you have added a second year on the deal? It's only for this year.
That I maybe would have put
like a team option.
What do you call it? Yeah, there you go. An option.
Mm-hmm.
I would have had an option for the year based on how it went, but Phillip Rivers is 38 years old, and you did see some noticeable decline last year. So it's very tricky to just give him that second year. So I probably would have done 1 year with the option.
Yep. What are you thinking, Sean? Blank check. What are you writing?
Yeah, Nick took exactly what I was going to say. I was so excited, but then Nick's a smart man. So, yeah, I would have wrote $25 million on it. Like, listen, Jacoby Brissett, I said it this morning, he's just not the answer. He's a great backup quarterback. But I think Indianapolis was desperate. They're like, listen, we have to get a top quarterback. Like, Phillip Rivers is a veteran that can come in and make us better now. I don't necessarily think the option would have made a big difference, to be completely honest. I think they're thinking, listen, if he comes in and plays like a top veteran will, then we'll just tag him. It's not that much of a cap difference. There were rumors today. I was talking to a Colt fan, and it came out that Tom Brady actually wanted to go to the Colts. And Jim Irsay said he would have rather had Phillip Rivers on a team-friendly deal. So I found that to be very interesting. But, Phillip Rivers is going to do what he usually does. The Colts are going to be fine, and I would have wrote $25 million on there.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I'd pay him 25. I get the market, but if I was dictating the market, I'd probably give him 22. $25 million is a lot for a quarterback. A 38-year-old quarterback at that. To me, it's a lot of money, so it better pay off. And if it doesn't pay off, it's wasted money. So
Well, technically it's not. Well, it's not wasted money just because it's a 1-year deal, so it's a wash after this year. The Colts have the cap room this year to let
yeah, but
25 million
you're
spare.
not paying Philip Rivers $25 million to be a bridge quarterback. You're paying Philip Rivers $25 million because you think that you can actually contend this year.
Oh well, they can, and I think Philip Rivers does help them do that. But I like if they were paying him extra years, if it was like a 2-year deal, 50 million guaranteed, then no, I don't think that's a good deal because you can't get out of it.
Yeah.
But with this deal, it's like you're guaranteeing him the money this year, and then if he sucks, it's not like the money's going to be taken out of your
go and
next
get
year's
someone
cap.
new in 21, probably in the draft.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
All right. So quick grade for the Colts.
I'd give them an A minus. I like what they did, and it gives them a chance to win in a very wide open division.
Yeah, I'd go B plus.
B plus. I'm gonna give them a B. I like the Buckner trade. It makes them better. It's a lot of money, but I think that the Colts had the money to spend, so they spent it. Good for them. So Colts get a B. Last team, the Jags. They get Joe Schobert.
Let's hurry this one up. But yeah,
they get Joe Schobert
pretty quick.
Something I do want to talk about is the Nick Foles trade. We talked about it on the podcast yesterday, but I want to talk a little bit today. Nick Foles, Jags. They got a 4th-round pick out of it. The Jags won that trade, right?
Oh yeah, because they found a team that's dumber than they are. They were dumb enough to pick up Nick Foles for that money, and Chicago was dumb enough to take that contract on. There's nothing. This is ridiculous that these quarterbacks like this with bad contracts somehow other teams are picking them up. Jacksonville should be paying for having to pay Nick Foles, but they're so lucky they got let off the hook.
So, do you think the Jags? So they have Gardner Minshew, obviously, but there's some quarterback free agents still out there. There's Jameis Winston. There's Cam Newton. There's Andy Dalton. Is there a guy out there for them? Or do they just go straight to the draft for one?
Yeah, I actually think Cam Newton's a solid option. I don't know why I can understand why they want to put all their eggs in the Gardner Minshew basket, but he's had 1 year in the NFL, and it wasn't like he was amazing. He was a good quarterback. So the Nick Foles deal, I understand they wanted to get out of that cap hit, which, any team that had Nick Foles at $88 million would want to get out of that cap hit. But I think they should have waited, seen who would have won in camp. I don't know. That's a possibility. I think they maybe go for Cam or Jameis. Take a flyer out on one of them, have them compete with Gardner in camp. But honestly, I do think one of those quarterbacks are better than Minshew at this point. So I don't know. The Jags are in a rebuild, so probably not. They'll probably just want to be mediocre and try to get Trevor Lawrence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're back into rebuild, which doesn't seem long ago we thought they were out of the rebuild, and they've traded and maneuvered their way back into one somehow because they're such a bad franchise. And so I think they're going to roll with Gardner Minshew and just kind of put him out there to the fire and see what happens and see if something sticks. And if it doesn't, you're going to be picking in the top 5 next year, most likely. You can get your quarterback of the future next year and to kickstart this thing once again for Jacksonville. I mean, honestly, there's not many more fans. I mean, I know what it's like as a fan to be tortured every Sunday, and I know that the Jags are right there with me. So
let's get a quick grade for the Jags to round this all out. The final team, what grade are we giving the Jags?
I would probably give them a B minus for bringing in Joe Schobert. I think that's a very good contract, and I docked him up a little bit also just for getting rid of the Nick Foles contract. So addition by subtraction.
I'm just gonna. This might be a little harsh, but I just think the Jags are one of the worst, if not the worst, franchises besides Cleveland in the National Football League with the deals they make. So I'm gonna go F just because of not even the signings or anything that they did, just because they're so terrible and they make no sense in anything that they do. I'm just going to say, screw it. They get an F, and hopefully in the next 25 years they'll make another run to the AFC Championship.
Well said. I can't get them an F. I'll give them a B minus. I think that the fact that they were able to get Nick Foles out of there and not having to really pay much at all. Very impressive. The Joe Sherbert signing is an upgrade for them. Other than that, not much else. But the fact that they've done 2 positives and not too many negatives. So for now, grading them on their free agency period, not them as a total franchise. As a total franchise, it's a different story. But for this free agency first week, they get a B-. So before we sign off, quick hits. I want from each of you the team that improved the most and the team that improved the least. Starting with Nick. Which team do you like in the AFC that improved the most?
Team that I thought improved the most is actually going to be the Chargers. I think they added a lot, and I did grade them an A-, so I like what the Chargers did there. Team that I think obviously is in dead last in the sweepstakes is the Houston Texans.
Fair. All right. Sean, do you agree with that?
Well, I agree, but that's not who I picked.
Okay.
He had some solid options. I don't think the Chargers were like the best team in the AFC to get better. I honestly think maybe I don't know why I'm saying this, but Buffalo. I hate that I'm saying it, but I just love the Diggs trade for them because it fits what they need so much. I haven't seen a team that's done something like that in a while, so that's great. So I think they got better, and then I think the Jets got worse. I just think they're mediocre. I'm not going to put – the Jags got an F, so I should have put them there. But the New York Jets literally did nothing. At least Jaguars went out and got Schobert. So,
yeah.
That's solid. But, I'm just picking on them. It was the Jets 100%, hands down.
I guess for me, I'm going to agree with Nick. I love what the Chargers have done and only making 3 signings. That's probably – they hit a home run on each of their signings. And Chris Harris is a grand slam. So Chargers get my vote for the most improved team, and the least improved team I would say is my own Houston Texans. I am a fan, but I'm also not a homer. And I will admit when my team is wrong. My team was wrong for trading the best receiver in the NFL, DeAndre Hopkins. I will now be
admitting
supporting.
It's the first step.
I will be pledging my support for the 2020 Arizona Cardinals. All right. Well, thank you guys, Sean and Nick, for coming on the pod with me today. Second one, we've got so much coverage out of NFL free agency because it's really the only thing that's going on right now. So you can catch.
Thank God for that.
If you made it to this point in the podcast, props to you. We also have our 2-hour NFC breakdown if you have 2 more hours to do. But you know what? You're in the middle of a quarantine. You have nothing better to do. So tune into our NFC podcast. You can also turn into our main show from Monday. Later in the week, I'll have Hitting the Crew back with Emily Hernandez. We have our first Hitting the Crew of the quarantine season. So be sure to check that out in a couple of days. And coronavirus might be here at UCF and around the world, but that does not mean Hitting the Field stops. So, Nick and Sean, thank you guys for helping continue HTF beyond Corona.
I just want to say next week's Hitting the Field is going to be great. We talk about the weather and how great our couches and beds feel. So make sure to tune into next week's Monday show as well.
Bet on the weather.
Yes, the weather.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you on the flip side.